So now we finally have the real reason why Kamala Harris will not be doing the Joe Rogan podcast. So Joe Rogan went on social media on Twitter/X and said this. Also, for the record, the Harris campaign has not passed on doing the podcast. They offered a date for Tuesday, but I would have had to travel to her, and they only wanted to do an hour. I strongly feel the best way to do this is in studio in Austin. My sincere wish is to just have a nice conversation and get to know her as a human being. I really hope we can make it happen. So, there was his reason right there. She wanted him to travel. That means that Joe Rogan would have to take all of his equipment, all of his staff, all his personnel to go to Washington, D.C. at her place of choice. That would have been money coming out of his pocket. Obviously, he can afford it, but money coming out of his pocket. And then you have these people on social media commented, "Oh my God, how can Joe Rogan be such a diva? She's the current sitting VP. You can't act like that. You want to have a sit-down interview with her. Look at this other guy, Manny, with a straight face, a podcast host saying he is unwilling to travel for an interview with the Vice President of the United States of America and Democratic nominee for president." This is the delusion I'm talking about. Because last time I checked, did she not travel to Los Angeles to do the Call Her Daddy podcast? Did she not travel to New York to do the Breakfast Club? So if she can travel to all these places to do the podcast, she can take her ass and go travel to Austin, Texas, and do Joe Rogan's podcast. Last time I checked, Joe Rogan has the #1 podcast in the world. She can take money from her donors, her multi-million-dollar donors, get on the plane to Austin, Texas, be on the #1 podcast platform in the world that has over 200 monthly listeners, and actually try to gain some votes from the right or from people who are Republicans or conservative. But no. She wants it to do it on her schedule, and only an hour. Donald Trump gave him 3 hours. So why would you travel to Washington, D.C. just to get an hour of somebody's time? That absolutely makes no fucking sense. Might have just done that shit on Zoom. And this is the delusion that we're talking about on social media. Say, oh, how dare he not do that? Joe Rogan has a much larger reach, much larger audience than anybody on the internet. 18 million subscribers on YouTube. Multi-million listeners on Spotify. Man is getting money while he sleeps. But they want to say, oh my God, he should travel to her. No, she could travel to do other podcasts. She can travel to Austin, Texas, get money from her bank account that the donors have donated to her, and go do Joe Rogan's podcast. Point blank, period. Now, there was a little issue where if you look at Donald Trump's Joe Rogan podcast, it has done amassed numbers. 40 million views in 4 days. It would have done more if YouTube decided not to censor the podcast search, because there was a little bit of a controversy. There were people trying to look up the podcast on YouTube, and it was just nothing but reactions from other third-party YouTube channels. And so when people couldn't find it, they start to question YouTube's integrity. Is YouTube interfering in the election? They had to be questioned for that. But that got fixed. It would have gotten more, but nonetheless, this is the situation that we're dealing with. So it seems like with only 6 days to go in the election, Kamala Harris will not be doing a Joe Rogan podcast unless they want to do something last minute. It's been confirmed that J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's VP running mate, will be on the Joe Rogan podcast, and that is expected to do big numbers. And I'm kind of surprised by J.D. Vance. The man can actually talk. I was not the biggest fan of him. Okay, especially, he pretty much did not like Donald Trump, but did a complete 180. Say, hey, you know what? I was wrong. I listened to the mainstream media. I was sipping the Kool-Aid. This guy's actually a decent human being. So he's going to be on the Joe Rogan podcast sometime soon before the election. But here's the thing. Why do a podcast so late? There's 6 days left to go. People have already decided who they're going to vote for. Okay, you're not going to change people's minds in less than a week. Maybe you can, maybe you won't, but people have already done early voting. Early voting has broken records, records that we've never seen before. So people have already decided who they're going to vote for. If they're going to vote for Kamala Harris, they're dead set on that. If they're going to vote for Donald Trump, they're dead set on that. There's no change in their minds. The campaign is already done. People have made up their minds. People have experienced the last 4 years. They've done their research. They've done that unbiased research. MSNBC, CNN, ABC are going to continue to try to do what they do, which is manipulate the media, lie, propagate, and do all that type of bullshit. People have already have their minds set on who they're going to cast their ballots for come November 5th, if they haven't already. So, but that is just a little right there. But let me know what you guys thought about Joe Rogan and Kamala Harris. That Kamala Harris will not be doing the Joe Rogan podcast. He's still open to it, but seems like she's not open to it. So what do you guys think? Leave your comments down below. Smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.